Hey fans, it's been quite a while, but I'm happy to say that I am back, and we're going to be taking a look today at the E33 locomotive from Repo and Dovetail Games. So let's start. We're starting in Bridgeport Yard. We're going to run a short freight move from Bridgeport to New Haven. And as we go along, I'll go through some details of the modifications that I've made to the locomotive and some operational aspects. As usual, I do recommend that you go into the files and read the operation manuals for the DLC for more in-depth information on all the intricacies of the locomotive. So, without further ado, let's begin. So as you'll notice, when you go to set up a quick drive with this locomotive, there are two different types. You have a cold and dark and a running. For the sake of time, I've loaded up with the running locomotive so we don't have to go into the back and pump the air into the pantograph cylinders. So pan's already up, everything's set. The important thing you need to note is this run switch right here. This control light needs to be on before any power will get sent to the traction motors. So what you do is you drag over to reset, hold it until the control light comes on. Now you have power to the traction motors. I'm gonna turn on the instrument lights. We're going to turn on the short hood headlights. And here you have your cab lights, pantograph controls, wipers, sanders. Got indicator lights up here. You got power knockout, wheel slip, control lock, overload. Line means line power, I think. And you got motor cutout. And then you got the load gauges for your traction motors, and then your typical your air brake information, speedometer, and a cute little notching guide gauge. Alright, so down here, we're not really going to see these controls because my camera is going to be facing this way most of the time as we're running forward. You got your throttle, your dynamic brake, your reverser, your locomotive brake, and your train brake. That's your bell. This is your cab signaling, which we will turn off. You can also use Control D to do that. And right here is your horn cord. As the manual states, spacebar gives you the long horn, and the C shortcut gives you your short horn. Alright, so first things first, we need to get out of Bridgeport Yard. As you can see, we can't go forward because there's not actually a switch that connects to the main line, so we're going to have to back the consist out onto the main line, throw the switch, and proceed forward. Alright. So as you can hear, I've replaced the bell on the locomotive. This is a cast steel bell off of a E33-8. I felt it would have been more prototypical to use that bell instead of the default bell, which sounds like a cast iron bell. And here we are in the caboose. Gives us a good view of the shoving moves that we'll be making. It's pretty neat. Alright, so let's head back into the locomotive. As you can see, even though we've passed the switch, I'm still moving in reverse because in real life you would have to clear the interlocking limits. So we'll stop once I see the signal, the dwarf signal past the cab window. Alright, so we've come to a stop. I'm going to throw a switch and then we'll proceed forward. As you may have noticed, the braking on this locomotive is a little different from your typical DTG setup. It doesn't actually show you brake percentage on the heads-up display because the brakes on this locomotive are a little different, as you'll find out in the manual. You have manual lap brakes with a minimum brake apply notch. So you have technically you have 4 service running notches. All right, so you have running release, which is supposed to keep the brake handle in as you're moving along. You have first service, which gives you a minimum reduction. You have lap, which holds your brake pressure in the brake cylinder in your manual lap setup. Then you have your service position, which gives you a reduction. So if you need more brake pressure in the cylinder to slow the train down, you would work this brake by going back and forth between the service position and the lap position while you're watching your brake gauge responding. When you release, you never want to go past running, because if you go past running and release into the full release position, which I will demonstrate here, you will go into the full release and charge the brake pipe up to 110. Once your brake pipe is charged to 110, if you try to bring it back to the running position, your brakes will apply, and you won't be able to get the train to properly release without doing the following procedure, which is to dump the train. Wait for all of the air to exhaust itself from the brake pipe. Then recharging. When recharging from an emergency brake application, you can use the full release position, but you want to make sure you bring the brake handle back into the running release position before you hit 90 pounds on the equalizing reservoir. Alright, so as we recharge, I'm gonna request permission to pass. Whoops. My bad. I'm going to request permission to pass the signal, and then we'll see where we go from there. As you'll notice again, when there is an emergency brake application, you will lose the control light, so you'll have to reset your control switch. So as you've noticed, I've not wrapped the throttle all the way around to 100%. It's because you really want to be following the notching guide. You want to make sure that you try to keep the needle outside of the red. Otherwise, you will get the overload alarm, which means you're sending too much current into the motors, and they're unhappy. Too much current to the motors means that excess heat is generated, and the motor blowers are not able to keep up with the forced air ventilation. So, as part of the adjustments I've made to the locomotive, I've adjusted the tractive effort curve. I've made it a more prototypical curve with respect to speed and force, based on official information from the specification sheets that I've acquired from the internet. I've also adjusted the dynamic brake curves with the same information, so that the dynamic brake effort with respect to speed is accurate. We will test that later down the line. I'm not sure at the moment whether or not I have further plans for this locomotive. If I do change anything additional to what I have already worked on, it'll probably be the traction motor sounds. But that requires a lot more work than, say, the 45 minutes I spent on making sure this pack worked before I released it today. That work usually takes a few hours, and based on my work schedule at the moment, I don't exactly have that kind of time to devote to that kind of work. Not to mention I have a whole ton of other projects on my backlog list of things to do, so I'm hoping I can find some additional time to get started on those things as well, namely resignaling a bunch of BVE routes for NYCT. With the redone tractive effort curve, with this quick drive 15 car train, you should be able to balance somewhere between 60 miles an hour and 64 miles an hour or so. With a light locomotive, you'll hit 65 to 70. The locomotives were geared for 65 mile an hour operation, so this is prototypical. Since the train brake percentage doesn't really work on the heads-up display, I'm changing it so that we're going to be looking at the heads-up display for dynamic brake percentage. That way I don't have to actually move the camera and look down to see how much dynamic brake I have applied. As you can see, I haven't really played with this locomotive enough just yet to figure out how quickly it responds to certain requests from the engineer. So we're going to be working on that. Hopefully I'll get a better feel for what I should be doing at the throttle and the brake on this thing. But the long run, it doesn't really matter. I don't plan on playing with this too much. It's a cool locomotive to mess around with. The exterior detailing is amazing. Really have to give credit to the modeler. Great stuff. Let's get back into the cab before I lag myself to death. I had to figure out what's up with this PC and the graphics settings. Right now I'm only getting 16 frames, which is abysmal, considering I really should be getting about like 30 frames in the cab. So I'll have to check the graphics settings. I haven't played the game in a while, so it's completely possible that some settings might have changed as the game updates via Steam and whatnot. So I'll have to take a look at that. Another thing I've changed with regards to operations in this locomotive is I've raised the power knockout speed so that you can actually apply a little bit of brake pressure into the brake cylinders without cutting off the power to the traction motors. It gives you the ability to power brake, which is convenient for certain situations, especially in freight operations. So you can power brake up to 30 pounds in the brake cylinder. After 30 pounds, the automatic cutout will kick in and you'll lose power to the traction motors. Honestly, I'm not even sure if they would have had a limiter in these locomotives since they were built in the 50s. But for argument's sake, I think 30 pounds in the brake cylinder is plenty of brake force for your power brake purposes. So we are coming up on Woodmont Interlocking. I have the ATC cutout, so it's not gonna like give us a penalty. But if you look at the top left of the screen, you're still gonna be able to see the cab signaling, the lights for the cab signaling. So as we approach the interlocking, we should see some aspect drops. Should be interesting. I think I want to go through this interlocking about 30 miles an hour, so I should probably start braking now, actually. Yep, there we go. So we're going to make a quick stop in West Haven so I can demonstrate what happens when you try to notch the locomotive up too quickly. After that we'll proceed into New Haven Yard, where we will need to make a reverse move to put the train onto the track where I want it. Hopefully that track is electrified. I neglected to check prior, but we'll see once we get there. So maximum dynamic braking is attained at 25 miles an hour, and the maximum dynamic brake force is 63,000 pounds. So, now that we've stopped in West Haven, let's demonstrate what happens when you try to notch up too quickly on this locomotive. So that's what happens when you try to notch up too quickly. The overload alarm goes off, and I think if you let it run for too long, the locomotive will go into penalty braking. I don't quite remember if exactly it does do that, but I'm not going to bother to find out now in the interest of time. It may not apply penalty brakes, but you'll definitely lose the control light. You'll get a motor cut out, and then you'll have to reset everything. Alright, we are lined up to go into New Haven Yard, where I will reverse into that pocket track, and we'll call it a day. So, I just want to take this time to thank you guys for watching. I do apologize for being absent for so long, but, you know, like I said, work schedule, etc., all that good stuff. So, one more quirk I want to note is that apparently you need to bring the dynamic brake handle to 30% before anything actually happens. But yeah, so thanks for watching. Remember to read the description for all the information you'll ever need on my videos, and also when you purchase any new DLC, before you operate, read the operating manuals. It'll save you a lot of time and hassle when you come into weird things such as cab signaling and cutouts and all that stuff. Especially for this locomotive, if you want to learn how to start it up manually, that's where you want to go. Go to the operating manual. So, hopefully I'll have some other content out pretty soon. Thanks for watching, and until next time, see ya.